Hey, welcome everybody to another edition of Leaders and Friends. It's my great pleasure to have today Joe Hogan, who's the CEO of Align Tech. Joe might be one of my oldest friends in the business world, although I look old and Joe doesn't. But Joe and I have known each other for 35 or 40 years. He's just a great guy and a great business person, great business leader. And it's great to, Joe, have you here today, and welcome to Leaders and Friends.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Joe, we go back to the early to mid 1980s. You were a
Yes.
salesperson in Pittsburgh. I was in Dallas. If you go back to those early days, like what were you thinking about? How ambitious were you, and how did you think about your life and career at that point?
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff, I think ambition's a good term. I think I was very ambitious as a young person. I loved business. Like you, I played sports, and so you expect to be able to contribute as much as you possibly can and to improve in those things. And so, as I joined GE, I think more than anything, I wanted to one, excel as an individual contributor and figured that out. And sales was really good for me because I went to plastic sales from metal sales, selling steel, which is great. And then secondly, you start thinking about leadership at some point in time, and how do you develop leadership skills or whatever. And then you can never forget about your family, right? We're both raising young families, and how do you kind of balance all those things and make them work? So I'd say it's a kind of a frenetic time in life overall, but I look back at it, it was exhilarating when I came into plastics, and we have such a wonderful cultural environment there that fit my personality, I think, very well.
Yeah, that was great. Was like one job or one time, maybe early in your career, where you looked up and said, you know what, I could actually be pretty good at this stuff, and you
Yeah.
remember that where a gear kind of shifted in your head?
That's a good question, Jeff. Yeah, I would say, after I think I got out of sales in about 18 months, they took me to headquarters. And I was just trying to assimilate plastics and, all the personalities back then with Uwe and Jean Hushin and the whole gang or whatever, and you wonder how you fit in. And then, with the product I had, which was, Baylox or polyethylene terephthalate at the time, and we're moving into polyethylene terephthalate, I thought, you know what, I kind of understand this business. I kind of, yeah, I understand the end uses of it. I understand the properties, the materials, or whatever. And it wasn't just selling something; it was assimilating it and figuring out within the culture. And what I love too is that we played offense, Jeff. Right? I mean, this was, and I love that part to
Uh,
say, yeah, this wasn't so much about operations. It's just, but how could you really drive demand and make it work? And so it just felt like, oh, I can fit in this culture and make a contribution.
You talk culture. You had a great stint and a number of great jobs at GE, and then when you pivoted from GE, you went to a European company. You went to run ABB,
Yeah.
which was kind of a classic European company. What was that like, and what did you learn, and what transferred, and what did you have to relearn when you made a change like that?
Yeah, Jeff, it's a really good question. Fortunately for the GE, we all had international experience. We traveled all over the world. And so, I mean, you growing up in Cincinnati and me in Pittsburgh too, we didn't know what an American was until some European pointed to us and explained what an American was supposed to be. And so living in Belgium and Holland in the early 90s, and then, moving into London, whatever, I thought I had a pretty good assimilation of the international business. But when I moved into ABB, what was really interesting is that is truly a European company.
Mhm.
GE was an American company projected internationally, right? In which so our culture and all was infused throughout the world. But with ABB, it was really interesting, Jeff, and you probably need more time on this too, is that being a Swiss company, your only survival of being large is outside of Switzerland. But they didn't necessarily project their Swiss culture. So their German business was German, their Chinese business was China, the US business, as small as it was more US based or whatever. And so I kind of had to figure out the whole culture of ABB and how to appeal to it. And it's a long answer to your question, but there's a lot of things in that specific operational piece that I had to get a hold of, which was Europeans are very conservative. They don't take risks like you and I used to take or whatever. It was trying to get them to update their risk profile. They weren't great marketers. They were good managers of what they had and optimizing that. And so I needed to bring in some leaders that were different than that too. And then in my job, the way I had to change was ABB, I think, is still the largest industrial company in Switzerland. So there's some political aspects of how you work with big banks that are Swiss banks, how you deal with politicians and labor and all that I had to be more attuned to.
Mhm.
And then my board I had a great board at ABB. It was so many different cultures and whatever. I had a great chairman, Hubertus von Grunberg, that walked me through a lot of that. So I think I just had to bring my game up a level, Jeff. I
Mhm.
have a lot more sensitivity from a cultural standpoint in the sense what I was dealing with. It was a different culture, and I had to kind of acclimatize to it.
Joe, one of the world's most famous investors of the Wallenberg family, they had, I think, the highest share, not a majority stake, but a high
That's right.
stake.
Yes.
Is there anything you learned from them or from that kind of,
Yeah.
let's say, family investment culture?
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff, that's really a good question. So there were two Wallenbergs. One was Jakob, and we all know Jakob too. And then we had Michael Tresco, who used to be CEO of Unilever, and he ran a couple of industrial companies too. They were a great tag team match because Jakob brought in years of investment experience, a breadth of understanding of other businesses that he was on and he invested in or whatever. And Michael Tresco was the ultimate operator. Like he knew details, he understood exactly how the business was moving and whatever. And so what I learned from both of them was just Jacob conceptually could give us good comparisons about what was going on around the world, where
Mhm.
investments were making sense and whatever. Tresco could really help operationally in what he thought made sense in certain areas in specific companies around the world too. And they played the long game. And so if you remember, Jeff, I started a job in September of 2008. And
Mhm.
right after that was the great, obviously financial issues that we had to deal with. And I came back to these guys with, hey, we got to take $1 billion of cost out of the business. Here's what we're going to do. And what really surprised me is they said, you're not touching R&D.
Mhm.
Not gonna touch R&D, Joe. And I hadn't planned on doing it, but it was great that they said that because they wanted to play that longer term game. And you
Right.
decide in European business, more than you
You're
do.
not going to hear that from an activist, Joe.
No, it's true. Well, when I left, they ended up with an activist a few years later. I wasn't there, but
Yeah,
it was, you do it in a responsible way, Jeff. But I
right.
was stunned that they would bring that up at that
Yeah,
time.
no, that's great. I remember, Joe, in 2015, you stopped by Fairfield.
I
We
remember. Yeah, yeah.
we had a cup of coffee together, and you
Right.
described the opportunity at Align Tech. I didn't know really anything about the company, but it was materials, healthcare, and industrial automation. So it really fit your background. And now, almost 10 years later, it's one of the most remarkable financial successes really in the world, certainly in that sector. Um, Tell me about how you did that. Like, how did you step into kind of that startup company and turn it into this kind of amazing success story?
It kind of leads me to this statement we learned in Pittsburgh, Jeff, better lucky than good sometimes. But Jeff, when you come into a business, it's binary, right? If you have a business that's in trouble, you're going to have to go in and make decisions immediately, and you're going to have to do it on half information. There's high risk factors to it or whatever. Fortunately, when I came into Align, Tom Prescott, I succeeded Tom. Tom was an old GE healthcare guy. I don't know if you knew
I
that. He worked in GE healthcare for a long time.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he left a good business. We had a really good balance sheet. We had good momentum in the marketplace. So I had a good 6 months to travel and assimilate the business and try to understand where the opportunities were. And like you said, I looked at it from eyes that I've developed and intuition I've developed in different businesses over the years. And what I came across pretty quickly is it was not international at all. It's primarily a North American business,
Mhm.
uh, and that there was huge opportunities internationally. And then an aspect of that is we had distributorships. These are not a normal distributor. These are just people, family-owned businesses that just focused in Invisalign that might run Belgium or they might run United Arab Emirates or something like that. That we should be going direct on because they really didn't understand the business or whatever. I realized that going to China, we were really underplayed on salespeople. It was just bigger opportunities. So there was a sales expansion internationally that I knew that we could realize in adding more salespeople, doing more in China, kind of becoming, in China for China, the way we grew up, that we could do this relatively quickly. Because, really our return on investment of a salesperson in China was at that point in time, 4 months.
Wow.
I said, hire him until it's 18. Okay.
Right, right. Yeah.
It was kind of things like that. Secondly, I learned that the technology matters here. And at
Yeah.
that point in time, a line could only do about 60% of what we call the malocclusions or the crooked teeth that exist out there today. And meeting with the guys here, I could see the engineers said, we can do 100%. We know how to do that. We have to spend more money there to do it. And so over this period of 9 years I've been there, now we can do 100% of the cases. And
Wow.
doctor confidence, Jeff, you know that from your medical days, is so critical. And many doctors didn't trust us that they would get into a case that they couldn't finish and then have to get into wires and brackets. And so
Yeah.
we upped our game incrementally. We probably gained over that period, probably like 5%, 10% of that sim a year until we just got to 100% this year when we launched this Invisalign palate expander. And then the other thing I really could help with too is that we were primarily, we weren't spread out internationally. We just, almost all of our operations were in Mexico and Costa Rica. And
Mhm.
so I really wanted to, like again, what we learned over the years is, well, put a plant in China, we put a plant in Poland, we put treatment planning that we did all out of Costa Rica. We moved it into now almost 10 or 12 countries. So we really became what you and I would classify as a global company, not just someone that's transacting from an international standpoint.
Right.
So,
Right.
but I would emphasize, Jeff, it's a pleasure to have, it's a good business. And the last thing, I never had a consumer brand before, right? And I didn't know consumer branding a lot. So, and it's fun
Mm.
to have your brand, Jeff. It's really, fun to know that, anyone says, Joe, where do you work? It's a line, and they look at you cross-eyed and you say Invisalign, and they, oh, I know Invisalign.
Exactly. Yeah.
The importance of funding that brand, of driving demand, often through an orthodontic base that doesn't want to use your product, almost forcing it through there, was a real. So it was variations of those three components that I took advantage of early on that I think helped.
And Joe, just market cap when you got there, market cap today.
Market cap was 4.5 billion today. I think today it's like $20 billion.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
fantastic record. There's a debate in Silicon Valley that legacy leaders, don't know how to work with startups and, stuff like that. You kind of defy that theme. Like what could every tech leader learn from legacy and vice versa? What could people from the legacy world learn from tech?
Yeah. Well, I think for tech, for what we've learned from a tech standpoint, Jeff, is, and when we're into it in a big way here, is agility is really important.
Mhm.
These two pizza teams in software, the Amazon pioneered over the years really means something too. And then how do you scale those resources all around the world, right? Because if you're writing C++ code versus Java, you work them together in the same agile way, but you need scale on it. And you almost need scale 24/7 around the world to be able to drive the speed that you want to. So it's scale, it's agility, and it's also great leadership. You need a really good tech leader that believes that, understands it, and has a history.
Mhm.
I think what legacy people like us can, teach tech is one is commercial scale and industrial scale,
Mhm.
and the power of momentum. Meaning these things might go slower, but once you have that momentum piece going, that's really meaningful. It's hard to stop it. Success builds on success, and you move it
Yeah.
forward. And I think rather than another quick startup and trying to move something like that, just the mass momentum of scale and what we saw in different businesses in that piece is something that I think tech people can learn from us.
That is such a great concept, this notion of momentum, that is really true. Like once you get, it may take a while to get there, but
Yes.
good companies, once you get there, you can really drive it.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, one or two last ones. Like what excites you today from a technology or other standpoint? I don't know if you play a lot in artificial intelligence, but is there something out there that you look at and say, gosh, this could really be a game changer, not just for us, but more broadly?
Yeah. Well, I think, everybody talks about AI today.
Yeah.
But Jeff, we are an AI business. We've been using machine learning for years. With 20 million cases out there. So think about it, Jeff. We use a thing called 5 It's final positioning. It's very sophisticated mathematical algorithms that
Yeah.
teach you how to move 32 teeth in the series and where they're going to land or whatever, right? After you get to 20 million cases, you can regress and figure out how mathematically correct that is or not. Secondly, is at one point in time, Jeff, 5 years ago, we were moving more data than Netflix. Hard to believe, right? Because all these big 3D files or whatever, and we had 5,000 CAD designers around the world that would help to do that. AI is really helping to consolidate that and move it forward. And so that whole AI component, one is applying it to a large database and then being able to distill some, capabilities you can move out of there that wouldn't have been obvious in some way really excites me.
That's a great, great use case. As a 13-year-old having braces, I would come home from football practice with a mouthful of blood. So I wish there was Invisalign in my day. Hey, Joe, last question. Look, you and I have been friends for so long. I know your life story. You're in many ways like a 1 in 1,000 case, from where you came from to where you've gotten. It's just, you can dream it, but it almost never happens. What advice, or what is it about, like Joe Hogan, that allowed you, to kind of get to where you got to? And I know it wasn't always a straight line. I know you had to pivot and change and do a bunch of other stuff. So
Yeah.
inspire us. Like you're like that 1 in 1,000 case.
Well, Jeff, we know each other's history. You are too. So it's part of it. I would say that, you need a certain ambition. The way you started this thing is what you want to accomplish in life and whatever. But I think it should be about what you can grow and what you can help to build, and not about yourself. And I think curiosity is an incredible power that people don't focus on enough. I think I'm incredibly curious as to why things work or why things didn't work. And it takes a certain amount of bravery to ask a stupid question, Jeff, too, that you sometimes avoid when in positions like you and I are. And I would say that you make breaks as you introduce this question, and you're given breaks. And the biggest break I had in my life was being accepted in the GE Plastics. I joined a team, I joined a family, I saw good leadership, I saw people take chances. And the way we worked on leadership and focused on that too. I think that's, what they say, it takes a village.
Mhm.
I'm very grateful in the sense of, a lot of what I can say is my successes have been the friends and capability that I learned at GE through all the different businesses and experiences we had. I can't imagine I would be where I am today if I didn't have that opportunity.
No, that's really, I agree. And Joe, just like I remember you and I flying from Mount Vernon, Indiana, back to Pittsfield together.
Yeah.
And we'd be with maybe a group of 4 guys. And one of the questions I would always like to ask is, what are you reading? And we go around everybody says what they're reading, and it's mostly like stupid novels or something like that. I get to you're reading a book on biology. You're reading like an esoteric book on, like organic chemistry or something like that. And I said, Joe, you have a curious, we all are curious. You take the cake, my man. So
Well, thanks. I think I remember that trip too, Jeff.
yeah, no, so cute. Hey, anyhow, so Joe, congrats on everything. Thanks for doing this. Really, lots of words of wisdom for people and leaders, and continued success. Best to your family, and thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Jeff. And I appreciate the opportunity here, and best to your family too.
Great. Thanks, Joe.